Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
How do you do? Happy new week to you. Happy summer.
Happy summer to you. Wonderful time of the year.
My favorite time of the year. Okay, so let's dive in. First of all, I really love the last two episodes with Amanda. I love her. Please, I want her back. I want your sister-in-law back. I need your dad back.
We got to get all the people back in lineup.
Yes.
I know.
But for this week, you're stuck with me.
Yes.
So I, was kind of going, I wonder what we're going to talk about today. And when I asked you what's been going on with your clients, you mentioned one particular incident that you sat in on. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was almost like this octopus. I could see these different arms of conversation that we could have. So for example, I think you're about to tell us what it was, but it was a doctor and his office manager kind of coming head to head. Mm-hmm. And one was, I guess you said they've had a lot of turnover, so they've had to do a lot of hiring and firing and hiring and firing, and that ridiculous cycle that we've all found ourselves in more often than we cared to admit lately. So we could talk about some of that. I think there were some thoughts on drama brewing and he said, she said kind of around the way. So, I'm giving a lot of teasers here, but I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah.
I think if you're okay with just going through the scenario like you did with me, and then let's pick one of the octopus arms to start dissecting.
Yeah.
And then we'll take another one. So this episode might be all over the place, but I think there's going to be a lot packed.
I think so.
Or unpacked in this episode.
Because ultimately, you're right. It kind of all stemmed, and I really wanted to bring this conversation up to you because I wanted your perspective on it, your feedback. Because this was a situation where my client... it's been a tumultuous year. So I think anytime we've got a really tough situation in our office, drama can naturally brew. And they've had just a year of people quitting, constantly hiring, constantly training. Oh, this person didn't work out, so now we've got to fire that one. We've got to move on. There's a lot of differences of opinions that can come up on who's being successful from who we hired and who's not. And so a lot of communication among the doctor and office manager having to make a lot of quick executive decisions, and it's just worn the both of them smack out.
I'm defeated, drained just thinking about it. It is such a draining process.
It is. Especially when it's not just one, it's multiple. And I do feel like that's still, unfortunately, par for the course. I just have so many clients that the second they get one seat filled, another one is vacated. And it becomes an emotionally and mentally draining process. And I think for my client, the practice owner, he's like, you start to become paranoid. Who's leaving next? And you move into this uber problem solving mode. Okay, what do I need to do? All hands on deck. I got to protect my team. I got to protect my practice. And I think the other component is his office manager was doing a lot of the hiring, the interviewing. And again, you know how difficult that can be when there's still a void of good candidates. We're having to sift through a lot of the bad ones to get to a couple of good ones. I think there were people that she thought would work that ultimately the doctor was like, I don't think that person's going to work. So again, lots of differing opinions there that just led to a very exhausted practice owner and a very exhausted office manager. And I think when we're in that mode, our emotions naturally are high, and it can breed this perfect opportunity for drama. And I think the team, no matter how hard the office manager and the doctor work to kind of protect the team from some of that stress, we can only hide so much. I mean, at the end of the day, we wear our emotions and the team knows, oh, wow, there was a person at the front and now they're not there. Oh, we're hiring again. And they're picking up on some of the stress of the situation. And I think it just creates this kind of hotbed
Well,
of
not
drama.
to mention the being shorthanded. So they're feeling it already from that angle, and then trying to onboard, like it's just the tip of the iceberg, hiring.
Yeah.
And now the real fun begins, and I can't even.
Yeah.
Because even for us, we had the one that finally took off in March for maternity. We had been trying to replace her, and we hired one, let her go, hired the next one, let her go, to where I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rehire. We're going to just have to shuffle tasks and see what we're not going to do anymore. Which is maybe not the smart way to play it, but I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't do it.
It's exhausting. It really is overwhelming and emotionally defeating. I think it just kind of puts you in a low where you do just want to go, forget it. We'll make do with less. And so, unfortunately, this situation, both of them are emotionally depleted. And I happened to be in the office on this particular day, and a situation had occurred the day before where the doctor was doing some career coaching for one of his newer assistants, and something that he does often, right? It's just normal, typical for him. But it got misconstrued because he had mentioned to this to this assistant that she would make a great office manager. She could make a great dentist. She could go far in her career. He was trying to encourage her. That ultimately made it through the rumor mill, made it back to the office manager, and now office manager thinks that he's trying to formulate a replacement for her. And so I think when we were talking about this, I started getting your perspective, and you're right. I mean, the tentacles of this go in so many different directions. One of the things that you started talking about that I think is really relevant here is, how do we prevent the rumor mill from even starting? And you had several comments on that, so I want to just kind of let you weigh in on this.
Well, for one, like you're saying, I think just me thinking about it from the only perspective I can, which is the doctor's perspective, I think, we do try to mentor and coach where we can. So part of me goes, well, maybe that's the problem. No good deed goes unpunished. Never mind. I'm not going to encourage you to grow and learn. Stay a dental assistant forever with me at the same pay, doing more, right? So I think that's part of it, but you get into these conversations, and I think, it's almost like that's what we're being told to do. Like, you've got to connect with your team, and you've got to seem like a real person, and that you're approachable and you care about them and all of this. And then, like, the minute he does that, wham, it comes back to bite him. And I would say most of us that do, this kind of coaching and things, it's not like we're doing it just to follow the template. Like, that's in our nature to say, well, I do care about you as a person, and, I want to know more about you and things like that. So I think, I'm glad he does it, and I'm hoping he doesn't decide not to do it anymore, because then that's probably going against his nature, first of all, but then also, for the team members that can benefit from his perspective and his encouragement and his insights. So hopefully he's not been burned, too bad with this scenario. But my question to you was, okay, so how did this get to the office manager's ears to begin with? So if he said this, and now he said it to this one assistant, then did she go to the office manager and go, oh, I had this great meeting, and he thinks I'm so smart, and he thinks I should be able to go on to dental school. Has he ever said that to anybody else? I'm just thinking about the worst, but how did it get to her ears? So what was the path of how it got to her ears?
So this assistant was then talking to her lead assistant about the coaching that this doctor had provided, and that lead assistant is very close friends with the office manager. And so then she felt like it was relevant information to take to the office manager, which to me then begs the question, number one, did that dental assistant misconstrue the information? So did she take that coaching in a different way than the doctor intended, which is kind of step one that we have to figure out, because was she communicating it to the lead assistant like, wow, he cares so much about me. He was coaching me towards dental school. He was telling me I should become an office manager. Of course, I told him I'm not interested in all that. Was it just innocent and it got misconstrued? Or was she herself confused on what the coaching meant? because it did get to the lead assistant. The lead assistant very obviously took it negatively, and then proceeded to communicate that to the office manager, who obviously is being blindsided with information about, oh my gosh, my boss is talking to an assistant about becoming an office manager to replace me. Like, that's hard. I mean, especially when she's gone through this tumultuous year and she's like, what in the heck? Like,
well, especially if she also can sense there's friction between her and the boss in this hiring process. And now she's like, aha, I see what he's doing. Good thing I've got friends and ears around this office. And so I start going, oh, good Lord. And so it's like that lead assistant, that's where I'm like, who are you? What are you doing?
yeah.
Are you a pot stirrer here, or are you a good friend, or what? You know, but this is the game of operator that happens all the time. And then somebody like me, I'm like, I don't even know what I said. Like, I was just talking. I had no strategy or no intention. I'm just talking and seeing where the conversation goes. And then now for me to go back and go, what did I say, or how did I say it, and what context did I say it in? I don't know. I had 5 conversations that day. I can't remember what I said. So I think, having been burned by that so many times, I think some of the things that have worked out, that I guess this is what you're wanting me to share with, that I think any conversation I have with anybody, like, I'm always coming back and telling you what I said, because I want to make sure that if I said something that I wasn't supposed to say, that you're helping me go, wait, you said what? Why would you say that? Like, you know, and you're like, okay, this is how we're going to damage control this. And a lot of times it's me going, oh crap, I didn't even realize that's how that would come across. And you're like, hello, this is how, you know, or you have privy to another conversation where you're like, uh-oh, what you said could get construed this way based off of, and me completely going, ah, damn it, like I had no idea, right? So I guess my advice to somebody who doesn't have a you in the office, I definitely think, you know, we've talked about our leadership style in the office that I just think is so helpful in so many ways. And so what is that leadership style or whatever? Like, you know, we don't have a manager in our office. We've got a leadership team that is you, one of my hygienists, kind of another one of the hygienists that's kind of, you know, she's been with me for years, but she really wasn't interested in learning more about the inner workings of the office, you know, and now over the last year, she's shown more interest. So she does get copied on more emails, just so I can keep her in the loop of the pulse and vibe of the office. So I feel like between the leadership meetings and just on a daily basis, like if I do have a conversation with somebody about one thing, I'm usually looping somebody else in on that conversation. Mm-hmm. I guess that would be the point. So
Absolutely.
To this doctor, I would say, if you've never talked with a lead assistant, just kind of like in a leadership, not even leadership, but in a, you know, like just so that it's not like just he said, she said, or in my case, she said, you know what I mean? Like, I guess now, for example, if I have a conversation, you know, we had our goals meetings back in March. I've got 2 that are grossly underperforming right now on my nerves. And so I pulled them both into a meeting last week. And I said, hey, you know, we're having this meeting because of this. Neither one of you, it's been 6 weeks since the goals talk, and these are the issues I'm still seeing. This is what I need you both to do to improve. You need to do this. You need to do that. But then I went back and I put that in an email to you and to the one hygienist and the other hygienist, because I was like, we're the people who are going to try to help them be successful. So you're not meeting goals. Well, what was the goal?
Right.
Well, none of those people, you were in on the goals meeting, but none of the others were. But yet we can all see how this person's failing. So I want everybody who's in a position to coach, you know, I'm not going to have another new assistant talk to this assistant about not documenting properly.
Right.
But the people that can catch that and can see the impact of that, I want them to be in on the fold that, hey, I did have this conversation. So now when, you know, you part-time hygienist are seeing some of these things in the notes, or you're seeing that she's stalking and you're like, there's no way she's done that note yet. Or you're seeing inefficiencies that you can be ready to jump in and coach and say, hey, I know Kuba talked to you about this. This is an example of what she was saying. So I don't know if this is going to
This
sound
is-
too vague to an audience member right now, because you know.
I feel like this is so critical though, because to me, we talk documentation, and a lot of times we think about that only from a patient standpoint, like, oh, I got to cover all my bases. But gosh, does it help from an HR standpoint? Because especially with your model, it's not helpful for you to go in and have that conversation with your 2 underperforming employees and to say nothing. Because first of all, the buck stops with you then going forward. You're the only one that has any knowledge of that conversation besides the person that sat in it. Then, let's say you do have an office manager or your leader or whatever. If they're frustrated by the underperformance and they think, she's sitting back doing nothing. Well, you've had this conversation, but nobody knows about it. In theory, the conversation didn't happen because nobody knows about it. Looping in your people or communicating, even if it's just a quick coaching minute, like, hey, this person made a lot of mistakes with this digital scan. I spent 5 minutes teaching her how to appropriately scan. Just wanted to let you know she's supposed to practice this and show me how she can do it in a week. We're going to reconvene in a week. Somebody else needs to know about that, because somebody besides you needs to make sure that happens. Somebody besides you needs to follow up and go, hey, I know you're getting back with the doctor next week about this scan. Is there anything I can do to help you? What can I do to help you be successful in that? So it's a way of, it takes a village, right? It takes a village to have really healthy, vibrant employees. And if it is only the doctor communicating and nobody else, then we are missing a lot of the picture here.
Well, and then you get to, now I'm not on the floor to watch everything. So when I come back with that person to say, hey, how's it going? I only have their perspective. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's great. I know how to do the scans and I know how to do all this. And then like the rest of the team is like, when is she going to learn how to do the scans? I thought the doctor already talked to her about this. Mm-hmm. So it's like when I loop people and so even saying all this, it could come across to some of our listeners that aren't you creating drama by talking about people behind their back? So it's, I think because people in the office know that there are a couple of people that have been around longer, that are kind of your mentors, that are kind of your leaders, we already have the culture incorporated there that I'm pretty sure everybody assumes that these people already know. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would say if you don't have that culture in your office already, then how do you start that culture? I guess to me, that's where I would say, initially, is that you're meeting with your whole RDA team and going, hey guys, this is not to belittle anybody or anything. This is so that we can all help each other. We're a team. And so how are we tackling some of these things together? Now, Susie, you didn't document this properly. Now, I'm not getting onto Susie to get onto Susie, but because I've seen everybody do it. Mm-hmm. Now, these are the areas where I made an error. You know what? I assumed you knew that I needed you to document this. I assumed you knew what this meant. So today it was Susie, but tomorrow it could be you, Lori. So let's all make sure we're on the same page here. Can y'all find other examples where I confused you? Mm-hmm. Because I need to know that. And then I'll come back and tell you where you confused me and how can we come back and build up better with that? And how can we catch each other and help each other? So we've kind of got that dynamic going on both in the front and in the back. And then for our leader meetings, it's yourself, me, our associate, mm-hmm. The hygienist that is more or less kind of the office manager. And then we usually have a front representative and a back representative. Mm-hmm. And I like that because then, as opposed to what we used to do, it was just you, me, the quote office manager who was kind of the manager at the time, and then the hygienist. Mm-hmm. And so a front member wasn't represented, an RDA wasn't represented. And so it was really kind of us only gleaning what we could see from our own perspectives. And then it almost made it seem like we were talking about the departments behind their backs and making decisions for them and understanding their challenges mm-hmm. without them being able to speak for themselves. And so it has been super helpful to have, even when we talk about should we incorporate this new material into the office? Well, the front's like, that's not my problem. You do whatever you want to do with that material. Well, not really, because how this is going to impact the front is you're going to have to code it this way. You're going to have to talk to the parent about this. We're going to have this on the consent form. Back, do we want to incorporate this? How do we want to incorporate? So it's just keeping everybody. So monthly, that has been super helpful. And I feel like we make a lot more progress on ideas and suggestions. And if we're having to say no to incorporating something, everybody understands the why behind that. It's not like I just made this, stuck my heels in and said, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah.
We've all talked about why, such that now when the front person who wasn't at that meeting is going, well, I don't understand why we can't do it this way. Her coworker is going to go, well, I was at that meeting and this is what happened. Yes. Oh, okay. So It's like they see that everything's not just like haphazardly decided upon.
Yeah. And even critiques can come up in those meetings. So what's interesting about it is, and just to clarify, I know you and I know what leadership meeting is. We meet monthly as a leadership team. There is always an agenda, either things that we've accumulated through the month that need decisions. It could be calendar type events that are coming up that we need to talk about. It can be performance issues. So if we've got our assistant team that is chronically making documentation errors, that is brought up in the leadership meeting. And that was a format that we used even when there was no representative there. And with the shift, we talk about it just as openly. You know what? Hey, we continue to have lots of documentation errors among our assistants. What do we need to do about it? Well, the leadership team is talking about that, but the representatives are hearing those critiques. And again, you think, oh gosh, is that creating the rumor mill? Nope, because it's being said openly and honestly right in front of the department representative themselves. And so I think what's interesting is we fear, like even talking about that, we fear that that's going to create drama. And in fact, it's like the communication is so open that it dispels any chance of drama happening from it, which I think is the genius of that model, is that it is all clearly communicated without refrain, I would say. It's not that we're kind of cutting down our words so as not to offend. Like the issues are brought up in the exact same way they were without the representatives there. And now we're just talking about it with them.
And like you said, it's so frank and so direct and so open. It's not like we have a meeting after the meeting to talk about how did that go and here's what we're really, like, that's the meeting. Those are the decisions. Like, that's that. And like you said, like even, I'll pull two in and I'm like, oh, when two RDAs in and I'm like, oh, well, when that RDA made this mistake. And I'm like, by the way, I would say this in front of her. Like, I'm not talking behind her back. She knows that I would say this because it's going to benefit all of you guys and you'll all work as a group together on this. So I guess I would have to say then you'd have to be true to that. You can't.
Yes.
Go and then have a separate meeting and talk about things behind people's backs. Like if there is something that we talk about, then I come back later and I'm like, I send an email or I'll say, hey, everybody, I need a quick 5 minutes. We talked about this at the leader meeting, but then Bethany and I talked about it again because this occurred to me. So I'm very transparent. And I guess if you have a transparent culture, that will go a long way. I'll give you guys an example of things that I have. Like we're going to have a leader meeting this week. So the things that I put out as, what is our agenda? Here are the things I want to talk about at that meeting. I want to talk about marketing overview. So for example, when I had the person who left on maternity and didn't want to come back, who left in March, we had a year outline of every month what we're doing for our marketing efforts. And now nobody's really picked that up. And I'm kind of going, okay, so I need to look at this. Well, I'm wishy-washy all over the place. I don't know. What do y'all think we should be doing? So I've tried to get, headway on this, and I still have made no headway. So I'm saving that for the marketing meeting because I know we'll have a front rep, a back rep, and everybody else, like that way everybody's kind of talking about what does take a lot of effort to do. Where do we see that impact? Was it worth the effort? Was it not worth the effort? Dollars-wise, was it worth spending the money on that? Patient-wise, were we targeting new patients? Were we targeting in-office patients? So all those things that I'm like, I can't speak to just myself and my own opinion as far as what's working and what would be worth our efforts. I want the entire office's feedback on what that should be. So I put that on there. Then we've got a new person starting next week, 2 weeks from now, whatever it is. So how are we incorporating her? Like you and I have talked about an onboarding plan, but I want everybody else's opinion too on how that's going to impact them. Then I've got, the 3 newer assistants that have kind of, been with us for at least 6 months now. What's their cross-training plan? And I want to know from the back and from the front, where do y'all need help? And where do you think this person, each individual person's skill set lies, such that we could, give them a task that they're going to succeed in. And I don't want 5 people cross-trained in the same thing and nobody cross-trained in that thing. So I really want kind of a global perspective on that. And then I want to ask about, are there any strategic things that we need to be thinking about now for the rest of the year? So here we are mid-year in June, and I want to know, like the use it or lose it campaign we do at the end of the year for insurance. Well, does that still work anymore? Is insurance still expiring in December, or I don't even know if that happens anymore. And if it does, then what are our campaigns so that we're not waiting till November to launch this stuff? After summer, like the next few months are going to be a blur, but September is going to be really slow. October is kind of slowish. So what is our plan right now? Are we going to be doing trainings? Are we going to CE courses? Are we already asking people to take vacations? Like, is there anything we can be doing proactively to think about that time? So those are some of the things that I've got that I want to talk about in our upcoming meeting.
And what's interesting about this leadership model too is the agenda changes. Quite honestly, there's never 2 agendas that are the same. And that may work for some people, that may not work for others. I think it just all depends on the doctor, the team, the manager, and what they need to be able to prepare adequately. But it really is, everybody brings their topic. So you've got your list of things, and then your hygienist will have things that she brings. The front office representative will have topics that they want to bring, because this is decision time. And then the clinical assistant team representative will have things that they bring. So their job, when they're the one assigned to attend that meeting, and the representative changes, by the way. So it's not always the same front office representative or the same RDA representative. It kind of ebbs and flows, and they decide who's going. Prior to that leadership meeting, that representative is collecting a list of things from the team, from their team, that needs to be talked about in the meeting. So this is, you've just heard Dr. Kuba's list, but she could have 5 or 6 additional agenda items depending upon what everybody else is bringing.
And usually there are.
Yeah.
Usually, like the hygienist, she's usually got a list of 10 of her own.
Yeah.
And so it's a good spot to really kind of resolve some pending things. Because I feel like that's, without these meetings on the calendar, I think some of these things would just be like, oh yeah, we're supposed to talk about that. And then I don't know what to do with it. Kind of like this marketing plan. I have no idea what to do with this. Well, we'll figure it out. You know what? Summer's busy. We'll do it later. And then summer comes, I don't want to think about this now. Yeah. So it really kind of forces us to continue to make decisions and improvements. And we don't have like big things pending. We've already talked about it and have a plan for things. And then it's not all on me.
Yeah.
It's so we can figure out how to disperse it amongst the team. So...
And I like it too because there's takeaways from it. So like there's certain information that the front office representative takes back to their department assistant. There's certain things they take back. So there's lots of dissemination of information that happens after it. But I think because there is so much information to be communicated, there's not time spent speculating on things like, oh, I wonder what she meant when she said blah, blah, blah. No, it is such a get together and get it done type meeting. And yes, do we even offer up critiques in that meeting or things that are broken and aren't working correctly? So is there some critique built into that? Yes, but that's not the point. We don't get together just to complain about what's not working. We come together to get things done.
We get a lot of problem solved. And I think it's very effective in the different perspectives you have. So therefore, it's not a problem solving with me and the one hygienist and we're coming up with solutions that the front is like, what are you guys talking about? There's no way that's going to work. It works for you in your bubble, but not globally. So anyway, we're kind of tangenting off here to get it back on track of your client. I think, I start going, how did this game of operator happen? And how did lead assistant tell the other one? And now the manager's coming back to the doctor and the doctor's like, I don't even know what the hell I said and how it was interpreted. I feel like if you have this more global, like if I was the doctor, or what would happen now is if I did say this to an employee and I said, hey, have you ever thought about this? Have you thought about that? What I would be doing now is going in a quick email, even before I forget what we talked about. So we just had the meeting before I leave. It's annoying. Yes, I'm exhausted, but it takes me 5 minutes then to say, I'll put you, Bethany, on the email. Sometimes I'll put my associate if it has something to do with things that he might stumble across, like if it's a training point or things like that. But I'll put the hygienist, and maybe I'll put the front representative, or but the point is I let other people know that this conversation has been had without, again, it's that tricky line to walk that I don't want to share information about this one particular employee. So I might share specific things in there, like, Jamie and I had a follow-up goals meeting, and I counseled her on, she shows, progress in this area. She's never thought about that. And we kind of just talked about, if she's ever interested in learning more about the front, that she should come in and talk to Amy, who's the office manager, and talk to myself, and we can look at resources together to see how she could help learn these things, because that would be helpful to Amy to offload some things, and just helpful to the office altogether because of this. My point is, basically, I have somebody else that can attest to, if let's assume this assistant really was thinking, oh, the doctor thinks I should, like, what if she did interpret it that way?
Yeah.
That now somebody else can be like, no, I'm pretty sure that's not what the doctor meant, because the doctor sent us summary notes and this is what she meant. Can I clarify for you? Do you want to go back and clarify? Should we all go back and clarify together?
Yeah.
Because there have been lots of times where stuff like that will happen, where somebody will go, oh, the doctor said I could be off this day. I'm like, that's not what I said.
Yeah.
And now everybody has an email to go back to, so that if it was me who wasn't clear in the meeting, because that has happened often too. I mean, I'll own that, where I'm like, oh, shoot, they probably thought I meant this. That is not at all the way I meant that. But in reflecting on it, as I'm typing the notes, I'm like, oh, crap. This is what she said. This is what I said. I shouldn't have said it that way. But then I clarified in that email, and I'll probably put that employee on that thread too, saying, hey, Amy, you and I met. We talked about this. We talked about you can have this day off if this. If you are taking the day off, then that. Did I miss anything? Is this what we talked about? Please add to this thread if I missed anything.
Yes.
And then that way it's very clear to everybody.
Yeah. And it also stops the rumor mill. So in that particular case, if the employee that you're referencing is even copied on that same thread in the summary, what do they have to spread at that point? What piece of information, what juicy little tidbit can they spread amongst the team, either intentionally or unintentionally causing harm? It's out there. The doctor sent a summary. It's black and white. And so I think it, in theory, kind of stops some of that from happening and makes sure that everybody's on the same page. Also, if little Susie, the assistant, thought that she kind of had the doctor's ear now because he was coaching her on this or whatever, she's kind of been put in her place, because she's like, oh no, this wasn't anything special. Like, everything, office managers copied on this, associates copied on this. Okay, well, it removes this opportunity for drama to spin out of a simple conversation.
Yeah, and I think I've been caught up in it so many times that I'm like, no, it's almost like witnesses. I want witnesses, and more than anything else, even from a simple, like, say I hadn't been caught up in webs of drama before, but just to remind my feeble little brain of what it is that I said, because 5 minutes after they're gone, I'm having another conversation. I'm going to forget what we talked about.
Yeah.
And so this way, this summarizes, at least in my mind, like, these are my bullet points of what I thought this meeting was about and what the next steps were.
Yeah.
And so that's how I kind of construct the email too. I'm like, this is, Amy and I met. This is what we talked about. Amy is having challenges with her documentation. I counseled her. We used patient A, B, and C as examples. I trained her that this is where she needs to make improvements. These are the resources I gave her, and we're all going to work together to make sure that she's getting the time to make sure these chart notes get done right. Amy is to come back and follow up with me if she doesn't understand what I'm saying because her charting has been incorrect. Perhaps it's me who's not. So we're going to work together to ensure that I speak slower and louder so that she can understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Amy, did I miss anything on this? If anybody else has any follow-up points to make sure Amy is successful, let me know.
Yes, that's such a perfect example. And again, that sounds tedious, but it is going to be it has multiple layers of impact. I think it's clarity for you as the practice owner, so you can remember what you said. It's also clarity for that employee so that they can remember what was spoken to them. And then anybody else that needs to be clued in on that information, it prevents the rumor mill from happening.
And you've got a perfect thing to just copy and paste into your HR file that you did have that training. But because I cannot say the number of times where somebody will leave a training and go, oh, she said everything was fine. I'm like, oh my God, I totally did not say everything was fine. So this just kind of helps clarify, this is what we talked about, and I know what I talked about with you. So if you want to act like that's not what we talked about, here's your forum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, awesome. I feel like that was a lot of different information, but I think the big key takeaway is documentation, and then incorporating other people into that communication to make sure there's
So do you think that would have helped this case without it going from one assistant to lead assistant
Absolutely.
to wherever? If he had just said, hey, I had this conversation with her and copied, stay lead assistant and...
Well, and I think it goes back to the culture that you mentioned. I think that it's all about developing the culture that we've got very open lines of communication. There's very clear communication constantly being shared. I think when there's a void of that, then that's when we fill in the blanks with the rumors, right? And so I think if there was a culture of that and that assistant knew, oh, this conversation is going to be documented and blah, 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 would she have even shared? Because if she knew the lead assistant was going to be copied on that because that's what happens after these conversations, then what would even be the point of sharing? And then that lead assistant is getting information about the meeting and she's not speculating on what was said. So to me, communication solves a multitude of unintentional errors that could occur.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.